Second. All right. So this week, thank you everybody for tuning in. This week I have Hope Christofferson. Am I saying that right?
That is correct.
Excellent. And she is the author of, I can tell my left from my right, the Loreland Bestiary.
Oh, you have the copy.
Very fun book. No, I am a huge fantasy and mythology nerd, as I'm gathering you are as well. Uh, there is, I mean, so this, wait, which one is it? This is a shelf of mostly fantasy or like folklore, mythology, things like that. And then down here is the taller books that won't fit up here.
Oh, I see. Okay. So more like lore guidebooks tend to be the bigger ones.
Yeah. And then yeah, this was one that I picked up probably about a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
amongst other creature books. Very much, I mean, two things that jumped out at me here. One, obviously, the art style. You have a very unique style, very unique, kind of repetitive, but a unique art style, very engaging, very ethereal. But also, what caught me was some of the creatures you include in here. So I've read, and I mean, not to like pat myself on the back too hard, but I've read a lot of folklore because I'm a giant nerd. And so when
So
I come,
awesome.
thank you. And so when I come across creatures I haven't heard of before, like the Yosei or gosh, what were some other
The
ones
Nuna
here?
High. Most people don't know about the Nuna High. The
Uh
mermaid.
which one is that under? The that was one of the mer people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I also love the way you broke it down. You had like the mer creatures, the flying creatures, the
I think it was by biome. So I was thinking of the Earth. I played a lot of Magic the Gathering growing up, and so
nice.
mana was different types of land that would give you different types of power. So I was thinking, okay, let's have
Oh,
the sky, let's have the ocean, let's have the mountains and the plains. So I thought of categorizing the imaginary via geographical environments, because you have to start somewhere when you're cataloging stuff that's imaginary.
no, I
It's
love
maddening.
and that yeah, I think that's one of the challenges of the creative endeavor is like where do you jump in at.
Totally. Yeah.
So I like that. I like the whole biome. I hadn't thought to using the Makara. That was another one I was unfamiliar with. Have read sadly very little Hindu mythology. Well, not. I've read like the sections of the Bhagavad Gita and some of the other Upanishads. But having attended a Diwali festival last year, I am sadly lacking in my Hindu creature lore.
Oh, there's so many. There's so many there. You could write four more books just on creatures that live in that pantheon. So it's always, it's always so hard to choose because they're entire oceans. And so you're trying to choose something that is not super popular, but then also representative as well to be part of a general compendium
Yes.
too.
So what kind of I mean I've got the list of questions, but what kind of got you on this path? I think it's a little different for everybody, but what kind of got you into the folklore and mythology train?
Oh, I would probably say depression. No, just kidding. I would say like being bored growing up, like a little bit. I think sometimes fantasy is the great escape when there's no other logical answer because oftentimes the world doesn't make so much sense. And to just
Yes.
acknowledge that and embrace the absurdity, there's a certain freedom that comes with that. And it's also a really great way to just expand the mind to make a decision to believe in something you know is not real. You learn how to apply your imagination. And, I grew up homeschooling in the woods in a more like
Oh wow.
isolated part of the world. So I wasn't super distracted from thinking. And sometimes thinking too much can, take you down different trails of the enchanted forest. So I had that space growing up, and I think that's why I got into folklore because people back in the day, they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have TV. They had a lot of time to just observe nature,
Right.
and they weren't that distracted by the things that we're oftentimes distracted by now, like, your your stock portfolio or your dentist appointment or getting your
Right.
kids to volleyball. So the freedom of being alone a lot got me into folklore and
There's a lot
nature.
of the power of boredom, and people are starting to come
Totally.
around back to that concept. Julia Cameron wrote a lot about that, and I'm a little bit telling about my age, but I grew up without social media, without internet, so I didn't have any of those sort of distractions in the formulative
Good.
years. Yeah,
Good.
definitely dealing with it, in recent time. But yeah, growing up, like you said, walking around in the woods, sitting by the lake, and just watching the waves hit the coast.
Yeah, and not feeling pulled from that in the
Yes.
present because I think it's so often like so easy to feel pulled from it nowadays when you could very easily have access to the entire world in a box.
Oh my gosh, I've heard the term touch grass being used a lot more lately, and that was a pretty outdated saying for a while. So to hear it that guy kind of come back, that this we've gone so far into the digital realm that now to experience something real, something natural is a treat almost, which is um, both wonderful and depressing at the same time.
Well, yeah, you can't come home if you don't go out alone, and I think we've been in the internet jungle for a little bit too long. And I think the return is going to be quite nice as well. The return to roots in craft.
Right. Yeah, because that's the thing is I think a craving of authenticity is a lot of what I'm seeing in people now. And then, the tales from long, long ago, even though imaginary, were kind of grounded in something in nature or curiosity.
And they're also so bizarre,
Yes.
you
Yes, that was one
know?
of the things when I started reading through the Brothers Grimm. I mean, a lot of people are
Yeah.
just familiar with the Disneyfied, not just the cleaned up part of it, but the sort of overall narrative. Whereas a lot of your, old folk tales, they just stop. Something bad happens to one of the characters, they're gone, and they're like, and the end. And you're like, wait, that's it? That's where it
What's the
ends?
moral, dude?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder why those got written down. It is, yeah. Yeah. Not everything has to be super polished. Maybe not everything has a reason
Yeah.
either,
Right.
you
And I think
know?
maybe that was part of it was more about exploring the fantastical and less about like narrative structure. So it was in fact Arabian Nights and a couple of the other ones kind of read like somebody's sitting in a bar and like, all right, so here's what happened. And then they start realizing that they're losing their drunken spectators. So they're like, up, and then a whale showed up. Oh, there's a whale. Okay.
Oh, so
Now
it's
everybody's
like little Easter eggs placed at the opportune moments in the story,
right to
like
make sure you're
whenever the
keeping people's
general attention
attention.
span, like TikTok videos.
There you go. There you go. The old
Yeah,
school. So I feel like there's that certain quality to it that it wasn't necessarily about like we're hitting all these beats and these plot points, being a writer, but that it's like I've got to keep my audience engaged. I've got to make sure
I'm a
something strange is happening that keeps everybody pulled in.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's probably very, very, very true. Very true. This is when the magical creature shows up and curses everyone.
So, could you share with us kind of a pivotal moment in your journey that kind of led you on the trajectory you're on now?
Oh gosh, well, I hate to praise the internet as we just finished bashing it.
Dropping some elbows
But
on it.
also like I think that the internet condensed generations quickly as well. Like I do think that because the internet trends change so quickly that there's certain memes and cultural stereotypes that are so embedded within like a 5-year period versus before that it was like a 10-year period.
Hmm.
So I had access to Instagram during the golden days, I would say. Like the 2016, 2015 era when it was just square images before the album, before the reels.
Oh
When
yeah, yeah.
stories came out, that was a huge thing. I was like, what's
Taking
a
me back.
story? Yeah, it was a different landscape. And
I think
because I
Vine was
wasn't,
still around back then.
yeah, yeah, God. Yeah, you're right. It was. Oh, the vines. I think I had an account there too, but luckily I didn't get sucked into that. But like I was always around Western art, like, cowboys and bison and Native Americans galloping across the plains. And so I felt this like sort of need to make artwork about pine trees because that's all I saw and
Okay.
all that was valued in the like place where I lived. And then I got the internet because Europe was a faraway place. New York was a faraway place. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
visit places once in a while, but it wasn't my lived reality. And then the internet came out, and my parents were like, "Oh yeah, go for it." And so I'm like, "Oh wow, look at these artists in Portland." And there was this one artist named Lily Sika Jones, and her handle's Rivulet Paper, and she was well known for just painting fairy tale creatures like
Okay.
Thumbelina and the Golden Goose with simple watercolor. And it was definitely leaning on folklore. It was leaning on myth. She was re-illustrating The Hobbit and other Tolkien
Ooh.
stories, C.S. Lewis. So she was heavy in on illustration
Okay.
and retelling well-known tales. And I saw this person on the internet getting, hundreds of likes, thousands of likes. And I don't know if that was super healthy for me, like placing value and judgment and everything and
Fair. Yeah.
wanting my work to be seen and its
Hmm.
value is associated with how popular it is on the internet. But it definitely allowed me to see like, oh, so an artist can like gain popularity, sell things on their little Etsy shop, and it can be about whatever they want it to be. Like the internet doesn't, it allows you to be non-location specific, or at least it
Right.
really did back then. And so that's when I shifted. I remember I was camping and I was like, maybe I could just paint a dragon. Because, as a kid, I painted tons of dragons. And then as a teenager, I was just doing horses and bison and pine trees. And I was like, I'm going to paint a dragon coiling around a castle. And I'm going to do a really good job. And I did. And I remember thinking, okay, I'll just share that. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to paint a fairy. And then I'm going to try to sell that. I'll just do it. And I was super nervous because I was like, who am I to ask for money for, like a painting? Like
Right.
people are going to think that I need money and I can't get a real job. Just all these weird things that
Oh
the
yeah.
internet, I think with
Oh yeah.
teenagers, the internet makes you think about these things. It's like, how am I going to be perceived? When in reality, it's just like your friends at 9 o'clock p.m. being like, oh, look what they did. Nice. Oh, it's a Jack Black meme. Nice.
Yeah.
So nobody cares.
We focus on it way more than other people are usually. What's the word? I was saying we're our own worst critic.
We are, and with the internet especially, we're all so interested in ourselves. Like most of us,
Ooh, yes.
like
Yeah.
just like in real life. But whatever. I mean, the internet's just the matrix mirror. But so I posted that fairy painting and it sold for like $80 or something. And it was tiny
Nice.
and I had put it in a vintage frame from an antique store. And I remember being like, whoa, there's potential in this, man.
This is
80
real.
bucks? Yeah. And then I started to get a few commissions to like illustrate fantasy books and I would take it so seriously. I would read them like
Awesome.
front to back and just be like, "Oh, I think I got this idea. Like I think I can translate this world this author has." And I would have conversations with the author and like this really has it should be between authors and illustrators, but when you start doing it for a job, it becomes harder to read
Oh yeah,
like
I'm
a
sure.
400-page novel
Whew.
um for like a certain amount of money like and then you're like but that's what got me started on it. It made me believe in myself and it made me like realize like, oh, so there's like other people out there who love fantasy and are willing to invest their real money on a fantasy. So
Yeah.
that translation of human labor capitalism into the imagined, into the dream of, a better past or a better future was also really, really inspiring too. And I think that's kind of what got me going on. I want to do this, as like a side gig or as a full-time gig, depending on what things are like, was the internet. Oh no.
That's great. No, I love that's
Yeah.
beautiful. What are some in your mind, and you can decide what this term means to you, but what are some unusual or unconventional places that you've drawn inspiration from in the past or
Oh,
recently?
that's such a great. See, I don't think anything's unconventional because when you're an artist, you're like, oh, this is the most inspiring thing ever. So it's hard for me to think of like unconventional things. With my sculpture, so I grew up in the Black Hills, and the Black Hills, they have a lot of Cretaceous era soil that's exposed. So I grew
Okay.
up
Oh
around a
wow.
lot of dinosaurs or
What?
fossils of dinosaurs. And so this ancient but real sort of world that um, we're all standing on. I think that did inspire maybe subconsciously a lot of these ideas of like maybe they were real, man. You never know. Maybe the wings just disintegrated or something. It's like the time is like the ocean. We've only explored a certain percentage of the ocean, and we're always finding new species. But you have to think about all the millions of years and all the shifting of the
Hmm.
earth that's occurred. I mean, you never know what we're going to discover that's already dead.
Right.
Mother Nature's had so much time and so much space to design species that even though some things might seem like mythological, they might just be undiscovered too.
Right.
So that's a cool thing to think about sometimes, is there's always this potential for something impossible to be uncovered.
Well, I mean, we even in human history, they're constantly unveiling new archaeological finds, new pieces of history that are older than anything we had
Technology.
currently recorded.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
the
it's like,
the Sphinx is supposedly like 5,000 years older than the pyramids,
what? Isn't
which
that
yeah,
weird?
yeah, I mean, and you think like, oh, 5,000, but like 5,000 years from now was 3,000 BC, and we know almost nothing of what was going on back then, and there's that big of a gap between the Sphinx and the pyramids.
I know.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
what was going on, in those 5,000 years, we have no idea. Or anyway, I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole
We
on
don't,
that one.
no, no, no. We don't know who their pop stars were. We don't know who their gods were,
There you go.
right?
We do know
Their
that they enjoyed
music.
graffiti, though. Even back in ancient Egypt, they would draw some pretty lurid graffiti. If you've ever gotten a chance to see it, I would check it out.
That's like in where just where do they put their graffiti?
Like on the street, on the walls. So they'll find like the
Oh,
cuneiform or the hieroglyphs, and then there'll be like a painting of a phallus or a painting of
oh, that's
some
hilarious.
monarch
I
doing
mean, dude,
something bad with.
we know what was going on. I mean, I think we've kind of been halted for a while,
Yeah, humans
like
have been
let's
humans all the way through.
yeah, the humor is always there and the technology just takes on different shapes, but and maybe that's depressing realizing we haven't evolved that much. The intricacies are always going to be different and fascinating, but I
Right.
really don't think that um yeah, I don't think our emotional landscape is that alterable. I don't, but that's just me. That's just me.
No, I hear what you're saying. No, I think there's a lot to that. I mean, obviously the cultures and the values will change, but we have periods of reactionism, we have periods of unification and division, and that kind of goes in a pendulum, back and
Mm,
forth throughout history.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
And it still swings.
oh yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
just put your
I would
goggles
say I've
on.
watched it go back and forth in my lifetime.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like it's almost like these climate patterns too, where there's like these little bumps, which like you can observe
Right.
in your decades, but then there's also like really big swings as well that
Hmm.
occur in regards to like population size or like literal world wars or the switching over of an entire kingdom into another power and the language. Like there's big shifts or the bubonic plague. Um,
Right. We
like
had about
there's
a third of the population
just
decline,
gone.
just gone. So it's completely changed the landscape for mercantilism.
Yeah.
But it also reforested huge parts of Europe because there just weren't enough people cutting down trees anymore. Or so many places just got depopulated that huge swaths of forest came back and it changed. I just found this out like a couple of years ago, changed the weather patterns for a while
What
because
the
of how many trees grew back.
Wow, that's amazing. Just that fast. And then did they remain or probably during the Industrial Revolution
Oh
they
yeah,
were
it's
cut
probably
down
sadly
again.
all gone now, but
Yeah.
or I mean, yeah, the vast changes in the ecology since industrialization, which in the grand scheme of history is extremely short,
Yeah,
but how
totally.
much change, damage, however you want to put it, we have caused as a species in the last 150 years, 170 years, somewhere on there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're like ants. We're really good builders.
We're the
We're re-
doozers.
yeah, we are. So it's like you can't I'm in a graduate program and it's very heavy on ecology.
Okay.
And we're always talking about human nature. Is it natural? Is it not natural? What's the moral thing to do with the climate right
Ooh.
now? What are invasive species? Like, what species should we bring in to restore balance? What should we just like leave and let be because we've already brought these invasive species in, but they're doing good stuff? Do we try to
Mm,
restore it to what it was? Like all of these just very human questions
right.
where we're like, how do we garden? And in reality, nature will just do its own thing, but
Oh yeah, it'll be
um
around long after we are. That's the part that we because we get a little fixated like we are the masters of the world and it will end when we end. It's like no, we'll mess things up enough that we can't live here anymore, and then
yeah.
life will
Yeah,
continue on.
exactly. I think we just need to be like, what would be best for us to like mitigate damage to our aquarium at this point?
So yeah, it's a good point. One of the things that I see, and here's a parallel between life and storytelling, is that I feel like a lot of storytelling all comes down to something being out of balance, and then the
Mm-hmm.
story is how balance is restored and whatever that means in that context. And I think that's a lot of what we're
Yeah,
trying to find in our personal lives, in our societies, in our ecology is how do we come back to a place of balance?
that's beautiful. It's the micro macro sort of
Right.
idea of like we're each an internal universe trying to balance the universe as a collective whole.
Unified theory. There you go.
Yeah, that's definitely what's going on. That's definitely what's going on. Well, I'm hoping for us.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, hopefully we'll hang in there. I've got
I
kids, so
think
I have to stay at least somewhat optimistic.
yeah, exactly. You can't just be like, guys, we're yeah, that's true. Well, also that's I mean, that's kind of how you design tomorrow too. Like a lot of the things that do end up altering history are just the results of people who are so blindly courageous that they just kept acting. That's sort of your only choice is to keep acting in the direction you want to go because it's a for sure
Ooh,
failure if you don't.
yeah. No, that's
And
pretty
then it's
profound.
also like why not too at the same time.
Yeah, why not? Why not me? You know, and not
Yeah.
necessarily in a selfish way, but if a change can be enacted, why shouldn't I be one of the people trying to do that?
Totally, totally. And make sure you believe in the change too. I think it should totally be like a very self-directed idea of what quest you want to go on, but I think that like people who have internal self-directed quests oftentimes align with the overarching like general trajectory of what would be good for the whole. Um, and that's just me like sort of like thinking like in a Star Trekian kind of way because if you do think about like okay so I there's an aspect of human nature that wants everything, that wants to control everything, wants all the power, all the
Right.
resources, and that will banish fear. But you know, if you do like really think about how interconnected everything is, anytime you hurt something, you're also hurting yourself. But it also takes a higher level of like thought and evaluation of long-term consequences to come to that sort of conclusion because it's like saying you can have the donut you can have 10 donuts in a week or you can have one today,
Mm.
right? And it's saying like, okay, and let's say you're not like trying to lose weight. Let's say you're like you need the donuts.
Right, right, right. You're allowed to
Yeah,
have the donuts in this situation. Okay.
exactly. And so, you know, it's kind of a bummer that you can't have it right then because you see it and it's beautiful and it's shiny and it's like just such an awesome donut. But you're also just kind of like, oh, I could have so much more if I just waited a little bit. And in
Right.
the meantime, you know, get some other sort of stuff done. And most animals would choose the donut right there
True.
because you might die over the course of a week. So it requires a level of like sacrifice and a high level of thinking and probability to make a decision that will benefit others and yourself. But it's worth it in the long run. It really, really is,
When
because otherwise things fall apart.
you plant what's the saying? When you plant trees whose shade you'll never experience is when the world
Yeah,
improves.
yeah. Gardeners are just planning for tomorrow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Uh, oh gosh, this is going in some fun directions. So off that, what are some unique opportunities or challenges that you find in your chosen medium?
Would you want to do opportunity or a challenge?
Ooh,
I mean, because those are like,
very
what
different
would you,
questions.
they're very different. Yeah,
Let's start with
yeah.
the challenge.
Okay, and you want me to talk about watercolor specifically? Or like
Uh,
just fantasy illustration or?
Yeah, we'll go off of fantasy illustration if that specifically takes you to watercolors, because I know you work in a number of different mediums as
I
well.
do, yeah. Well, most of my income comes from fantasy illustration, and I use watercolor nowadays almost exclusively to do that. I used to do some pen and ink. Um, and, watercolor is really, I can't bash it at all. Learning it was very difficult, but now that I'm used to it, I make fewer mistakes. It's pretty economical. I can travel with it.
Okay.
Um, what's bad? I guess getting burnt out, but that's not even a watercolor problem. Watercolor sometimes doesn't sell for as much as oil paintings if you're trying to sell originals.
Okay,
You
okay.
you always have to, well, you don't always have to, but if you're going to display it, you have to frame it usually. So that can kind of be a burden, but it's a really wonderful medium. I think, and this is true of any medium for anybody who's working, is there's burnout, right?
Oh yeah.
So you get really good at something and it's your language and then you're kind of speaking it all the time, so that wonder wears off. It would also again be the donut thing, having a donut every day. At first it's great, but then you're just like, this is just really boring.
But I think that goes back to earlier where you've got to touch grass. You've got to recharge your batteries and kind of, set the project aside for a little bit, walk away from
Ex
it.
Totally. Yep, that's definitely what I've learned to do for sure. And then also like making sure you do a painting for yourself once in a while, even if you have other things that you should be doing. I think that's a really good way to have fun with the medium because you're experimenting with it, you're learning from it, and there's always something to uncover, even if it seems like you've memorized everything in and out. Like
Oh,
there's you can always keep going deeper into your niche.
okay, so sometimes you just do paintings just for you. I mean, I would assume.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I definitely sometimes do that. I wish I did it more, like little paintings I've been doing. But no, I've definitely done a lot of paintings for myself. That's usually how you get started because people want to see a portfolio and
Right.
evidence that you can do it. So yeah, beginning I did a bunch of paintings for myself and yeah, recently more so, I've delved into ceramics.
Ooh.
So I haven't had as much free time to focus on painting. But what's great is when you do something different, you come back, like you said, touching the grass, refreshed.
What's an unexpected kind of surprise you've given yourself? This isn't on the list. This is I'm going off the cuff here. What's kind of an unexpected surprise you've had in doing a project that's just for you? Has there been like a little nugget where you're like, "Ooh, this is really neat. This is something I was not expecting."
Oh, a project that was just for me was something that, uh, I guess, I guess I learned something every day. So, one time I wanted to make mermaid ceramics, and so I
Okay.
made a bunch of ceramics and I sunk them in the ocean. I talked to a fisherman. I said, "Is it okay if I put my ceramics in a lobster crate?" And, I didn't think, I was just kind of like, all right, hopefully it looks like an artifact from Atlantis. And I ended up like holding an octopus and pulling out these really beautiful creations that they were my sculptures of like, dragons and just other things.
But now
And the
more weathered.
ocean, yeah, well, the ocean put coral on them and added physical material. So it's like I sculpted it and then I gave it to the hands of nature, and nature added on.
That is
Um,
fantastic.
it was really, really cool. And so, now I think about that and I'm just so much more aware of how little we have to do as artists to make artwork. Like
Huh.
I feel like my job sometimes is just to create a frame for naturally made objects. Like, this, if you're listening, sorry guys, but like this is a seashell and I use it as a vase for flowers. It would have taken me
Ooh.
like 4 hours to sculpt something so beautiful, but now I realize that the form was already there, hidden. So I'm just more like aware of how there's real magic out there, and we oftentimes see it when we're little because everything's new. So
Mhm.
you see something for the first time, you're like, wow, that's incredible. What's going on with that? And then we just get used to things. And we get stressed or whatever, and mundanity can take over. But to remember what a miracle it is that the big puzzle of the cosmos fits together and is also evolving is such a cool gift, and so much inspiration comes from that, so much wonder, so much awe. So yeah, yeah, that was my most recent little mistake discovery,
That's
unexpected thing.
fantastic. That's a great story
Yeah,
too. Um,
yeah.
so over time, what are has your concept of a good project evolved over time? And if so, in what way?
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I think that I have done tons of projects with the hope that they would make me money, right? And I'm sure we've all been there. So now my criteria for a good project is one, do you love it? Is this something that you would be doing on your own? Or two, are you getting compensated for your time? And those are just like big person, more so professional illustration
Right.
things, but those are kind of my criteria. Like it's gotta be something that you see a future in. You see it connecting to your work somehow, right? It speaks to what you're naturally interested in. And if not, then you should definitely be getting compensated for the use of your skills.
Yes. Yeah. At the end of the day, we got bills to pay.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and like, yeah, I'm sure everybody's or a lot of people have dealt with the like, will you paint my dog or something DM on Instagram, which is something that a lot of artists kind of deal with in one way or another.
Mm,
And just kind of learning like how to say no with
right.
things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, honestly, what's funny is I know artists deal with this probably in a different way where a lot of people want or expect, sort of free or very low priced work.
Hmm.
But I feel like honestly, and I'm just saying this as a reassurance to artists. I feel like everybody I've talked to, whatever field they work in, if they're an AC air conditioner repair person, if they're a computer technician, whatever it is they do, they've got some friend or family member. Hey, can you take a look at this for me? Can you do this? And they're like, no, I can't, or I mean, maybe within
Yeah.
range, but like, establishing those boundaries of like, no, I can't just be everybody's free blank of this thing
Hmm.
I do professionally.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because it is an honor. It's totally an honor to like be selected to bring magic forth. Uh, but there's also like empathy without boundaries can totally be self-destruction, especially for sensitive
Ooh,
artists.
yes, yeah, and sometimes we have to watch out for our fellow artists and be like, hey, you need to, kind of box. I mean, not trying to like coerce somebody else's
No,
process, but
totally.
watch out for each other.
Yes, definitely. Definitely talk to your friends about like pricing, talk to your friends about contracts, all that sort of stuff. Because,
Right.
it's just business, and artists oftentimes are just having so much fun they don't think about it.
Let's see. What are some, I feel like we might have touched on this one already. What are some go-to techniques that you have for resolving maybe creative block or stagnation?
Oh gosh, I would say ice cream for sure.
Ooh, I've been doing it
Um,
all wrong.
well, now you have an option. It's super easy. For creative blocks, don't be hard on yourself because usually you're having a creative block because there's a voice in your head that is linking to comparison, and comparison is the thief of joy.
Hmm.
And I don't think many people are super creative when they have no joy, right? So that means that you
Yeah.
need to like lay off the gas pedal a little bit and just tell yourself, why don't I just not create today? Like, why don't I just not do it? And see what happens, because oftentimes you'll go for a walk or something and that little kernel of inspiration will hit you on the head, or you'll just see something because you don't have your focused creative goggles on. We're just like, okay, where's my next idea? But they're actually
Hmm.
blinding you because the idea is like right here, but you can't see them because you're looking
Yeah.
right here.
Well, I think,
So try to zone out.
yeah. And again, just maybe get outside sometimes. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to co-opt your answer, but I was just thinking about like how we spend way too
Oh,
much time in front of the screen, you know.
yes, that would be totally something as well. Like that's definitely my go-to is like, okay, go to the park, go for a jog, be around people sometimes because like aside from isolation from nature, I think social isolation can also be really bad and
Mm.
detrimental as well to creative people. Being around the
Yeah.
wrong people can totally tamp your spirit, but
Yes.
not having like other creatives who can inspire you can also be detrimental as well. So having a garden of flowers that you can go see and then also people
Have
is
your
good.
tribe. Find your tribe. Okay. This
Totally.
one's going to be a little bit different. So we often seek out stories that affect us emotionally, or pieces of artwork, ones that scare us
Yeah.
or make us cry or make us uncomfortable. From your
Yeah.
perspective, what do you think is going on here? Like, why do we do that as a species, and what is maybe going on there that kind of draws us to these things that move us so deeply?
Well, I think that we are like terribly afraid of death. And death is oftentimes equated with isolation. And when you see something that makes you feel something that was made by another human being, usually art's made by another human being,
Yeah.
it means that they were experiencing the same thing as you,
Huh.
or you're not alone in that experience. There is this like interconnected, shared sort of a movie that we've all seen some version of, and art reminds us of that. And I don't know if it answers any questions, but it's a little glimmer in the journey, and that's why we need to feel it once in a while to be reminded that we're not alone. Because you can sit in a living room with somebody, and you're not alone. But in a way, nobody's going to know your internal landscape. Nobody's going to know what that ocean of emotion is like. And when you have something affect it, like art will churn the currents of the internal you in a way that um, other things can't. And I think it's that internal consciousness that is the driving force of how we experience the world.
I love that answer.
Yeah, that's my hypothesis. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Of what drives us to that? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would say that at least for your average person, life is fairly mundane. Work, commute, pay
Mm,
bills, take care of like small necessities, and that the moments that impact us the most, even if we don't remember them that clearly, we remember the feeling of our first kiss of somebody that we loved, or when we met them, or when we held their hands, or when
yeah.
we saw a beautiful sunrise or sunset. These emotional moments that resonate with us, and I think that art allows us to hit that same place.
Mm,
That it makes us, it sparks that feeling of wonder, that feeling of love. And so that, like, desire to really just feel moved, I think it is like breath, because you know I don't know, I don't know if I'm articulating this well, but I feel like a lot of our life we are held underwater, and
mm,
we suddenly in these moments get to uh break the surface and really breathe deep and really feel the salt and the air and the sunshine, and it just all hits us, and those are the moments that we live for, and I think that we live for that in real life. um and I think that that's why art, in certain matters speaks to us the way it does, especially the parts that make us a little uncomfortable or kind of hit a really, emotional chord with us. At least that's my.
yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
agree.
so there's an author, Tim O'Brien. He talks about story truth being truer than happening truth.
Hmm.
That a fictional piece, and I feel like this is a good jump off from where we just were. A fictional story can perfect, or piece of art can convey a more profound emotional truth or experience than the factual account. How do well, one, do you in your own work grapple with this concept in to how so? Is the ultimate goal to create a perfect illusion of reality, or is it to bend and break that reality to serve a more like a deeper, more resonant truth?
Mm, I need to brush up on my philosophers, but there are some philosophers who used to argue that the only thing real was the internal landscape. Like
Uh,
everything outside of our minds is just a projection, and it's not as valid because it can never be truly known. The only thing you can know for sure is how you feel, because
mm,
that's your consciousness, and that's probably why, art that isn't leaning specifically towards a historical account or quantitative data has a truth to it from that perspective,
mhm.
because you can never get a complete picture
Right.
of anything. You're always going to be sitting from atop some pyramid looking from a specific angle. So at least to acknowledge the lie, I think is very, very truthful. And I think that's where the power of fantasy art comes from, or art that works with symbolic metaphor, or abstraction. And I guess I kind of like that, because I don't think any of us is totally like sure exactly of what that feeling was the first time you saw Lord of the Rings, or the end of Titanic, or the first time you got your dream job interview, or you learned that your pet died. Like these moments of extreme emotional experience, they're inherently abstract for each one of us, right? It's really, really difficult, even if you have synesthesia, to pinpoint the essence of joy or a joyful memory.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think that we can try to do that, but it will always inherently be uh, an illusion.
Huh.
And working with the illusion is so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun because I think it gives other people, especially the viewer, you're not lying to them about like this is reality. They're just like, no, dude, this is a painting, and your viewer's just like, whoa, I also live in a painting, don't I? So it's sort of fun in that way.
Yeah.
It's sort of fun in that way. So I do believe that that's the power of the metaphor and of the abstraction to do that for us.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let's see. So as far as projects and things like that, how do you kind of keep track of, what you're doing next?
Mm.
Or, how do you kind of keep your queue in line? And then what's the when you have a new idea, what's kind of the first thing you do to kind of cement that concept before
Ooh.
execution?
Ooh, like instigated. Okay, to answer your first question about how I keep things organized, it's oftentimes based on when people ask. Like if somebody asked, and then I'll figure out when the deadline is. So if somebody really needs something really fast, I'll prioritize that. If somebody says I can have a number of months, then I'll put that one on the back burner and juggle
Okay.
that. And yeah, so all very, very just project based, depending on what the person or the company needs. And then if I have an idea, gosh, well, how do I get that done? I stumble around with so many ideas. I really do. Like even my book was just a bunch of random creatures that I didn't know what I was doing. I was just pretending to document things that I saw in the woods or I read about. And then you look back and things connect. And I think that's the way artists operate, because there's no point in making a painting or a project if you know what it's going to look like in the end. That's design. But if
Hmm.
you want to go into the unknown, then I just you gotta kind of just experiment constantly. And then of course art can evolve into design, and design can evolve into art. But since this is more so a story about art, um, I oftentimes have very little idea what I'm doing until I turn around and it's standing behind me.
Huh. Nice. Uh, can
Yeah.
can you share a moment from your life that or like that inspired a piece of art or a creation of yours?
Oh gosh, there's so many. Most of them are animal based, right?
Okay.
So, oh, gosh, I
I like
feel
that
it's
already.
just. Yeah, they're almost always experiences with animals who have totally just made me fall in love with the natural world because you see this intelligence, you see this beauty.
They're just so
Um,
pure.
yeah, they're like emotions walking. And what has inspired directly? I mean, most of my mermaids are based on fish that I've seen swimming. I grew up
Okay.
riding a horse, and his name was Dakota, and he was a white horse, and I'd always pretend that he was a unicorn. And so, as I grew up, I started painting more unicorns, and I kind of realized that, like, oh, this is probably because you were always interacting with this animal all the time, and this is like one of your great friends and your mentors growing up. So that's one of those things where sometimes artists and writers will have recurring motifs in their
Hmm.
work as you look at, like, oh, what did they do over their 60-year career? That one is inspired by a super close relationship that I got to have with an animal that was more like a collaboration of where do you want to go now? I don't know, versus, left, right, straight, stop. And and that will always, kind of be the source of unicorns that I paint in any equine.
My daughter is a unicorn junkie, so she'll be very excited about
Oh,
that.
oh, that's so wonderful. They're always there, man. That's
They're
beautiful.
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so last question I've got. What is a piece of advice that if you could go back and tell your younger self about the craft or business of being a creator, what would you go back and tell younger you?
I am just wrapping up grad school right now. I'm getting an MFA, so Master's of Fine Arts
So you're
degree.
not sleeping very often?
No, not really. And I do oftentimes ask myself this question. What would I have done differently? Oh gosh. To be quite honest, I don't have too many regrets on the, like, even though it's hard and it's not the easiest job, right? Like, you got to have thick skin, and you kind of have to be an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
and you have to be able to go into a fantasy land, which requires you to, like, be chill too,
Right.
on top of remembering invoices and not taking things personally. So I would say just be less stressed,
Okay.
and believe in yourself. Like, make fantastic absurd artwork. Paint that weird chimera. Add some glitter to it. It doesn't have to be super deep. You don't have to worry about the contemporary art world liking your stuff. You don't have to worry about being a certain way with your creative style. Like,
Mm.
if you can just do you as an artist and somehow block out all of the noise, even though you have to be a receptacle for wonder, because that's where everything comes from. If you can just, like, not doubt yourself, that would be, if I could give myself that gift, that would be awesome. If I could time travel. And even for right now too, I think that, like, everybody, no matter what age they are, could probably take a little piece of that towards their creative practice,
True.
and just create like they did when they were a kid. Just go for it. Don't hesitate. Little kids' artwork is so great because they don't think about the technique, they don't think about why they're doing it. They're just like, and there it is. There's the Hydra with four boats around it, and then there's a cat in the ocean, and you just look at that and you're like, well, that was bizarre. Why'd you do that? I don't know. I'm gonna go do something
Just
else now
occurred to me.
too.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
I love
being able
it.
to stream that's
Mm.
incredibly important as a creative.
And do it without judgment in the process.
Yeah, yeah, without thinking, where's this gonna go to? Like,
Hmm.
is there a practical use? Can I put this in a story? Can I put this in just don't even worry about that.
I think it was Steinbeck that had said, "Write drunk, edit sober." And
Yeah.
although I don't necessarily say, you necessarily have to be inebriated to create, but I think he's saying like turn off your brain, like just get rid of that analytical side and just go.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Because imagine
Huh.
you had a crazy friend who was, like, making awesome artwork, and you kind of look forward to it because you're like, I wonder what the heck they're gonna write now. Versus you have another friend, you're like, oh, it's gonna be another Victorian novel about tea parties.
Right.
Great form, but I guess I know it's gonna come. You're gonna be way more excited to be like, what did this dude write today? He's been out on the town, haven't seen him for 2 months. I guess he was sailing to Tahiti and came back with some giant squid creature. I'm ready to read his, like
Right.
that's the S. If you can do that in your head, if you can be like, okay, so I have these two people in my head. I have the editor and then I have the creator. Try to let the creator just be them.
Well, I think there's a lot of power in just leaning into our unique perspective because like even your art, for example, it is unusual. Like the style that you have is unusual. I haven't seen a lot of other art that reminds me of that, but that's what drew me to it.
Oh,
That's the sort of dreamlike quality I see to these creatures that you create. Like that's you. That is something that you brought to the table. And you know, I mean, at least me specifically. Wait, where did I just had it in my hand. But
they
yeah,
run around.
they do. They get up. But also
Yeah.
this globe of the dragon and the unicorn, that just makes me happy because that's like the fantasy world in a nutshell to me is
Yeah, it's a cosmological worldview. I think every artist should think of like, how is the world structured? All the great philosophers did that. Are we not just floating on a giant snow globe aquarium that's sitting on the back of a unicorn with the sky guarded by a dragon? I mean,
of course
that would be awesome.
that would be awesome.
And and we each have that power to think of some absurd, giant, overarching image of how the universe is structured. And that's a creative human thing to do. It's
Yeah,
so cool. It's so, so cool.
and just letting
It's world
yourself do
building.
it.
Yeah.
Because I remember
Yeah, dude.
when I started acting, one of my friends, she was like, I remember her saying something like, "I wish I could do what you do." And I remember asking her, I remember asking her at the time, I said, "Do you know the difference between you and me?" And she kind of gave me this look of like, "Oh, you've been to acting classes and you've done this and done that." And I was like, "No, no, no, nothing like that." I was like, "I give myself permission. That's it."
To Yep. Totally. That's why I actually took, an acting class because I saw that my professor was like, "Oh, so he just does it?" And I think actors are really good at just putting themselves out there in front of
You
people
have
because
to.
if you're an artist, you can hide in a room and you can like be like da 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 da. But as an
Right,
actor, like there's no gate, there's no wall
right.
between you and the critics
Especially
or
when
the
you're doing
viewers.
theater, like you're just there and they're watching you. And that's it's an
You're just
experience.
like, this is absurd. Yeah, this is absurd,
Yep.
but it makes everything easier, right?
Well, my camera's zooming in on here. This
I don't
just
know,
it's
some
just
random
zoomed on
book.
nowhere. Anyway, I guess
Just
I
got
guess we're
more
going
intense.
I guess we're going out on my jade statue here. That's what we're
Oh, that's wonderful. It'd be so cool if he started talking and like it closed out in like a magical sort of Teletubbies PBS thing with a rainbow.
He's gonna be my narrator from now on. I haven't named him
Oh,
yet. I do have a book
that'd
on
be so.
Mosey. Maybe he'll be Mosey.
Oh, I like that. I really, really like that. Cool. Well, if Mosey ever wants to interview me again, I'll jump on there and talk to a little jade statue.
Sounds great. Well, I thank you. Do you have any send off or anything you'd like to say to the audience before we go? Any final thoughts?
Believe in yourself, you guys, and make awesome, weird artwork because the world needs more of it. It helps the world just as much as it helps you.
I love that. Thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody at home, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.